All right, perfect. Okay, guys. All right. Well, I'm going to do a quick introduction of our guests. We have Jeannie Barnett and Marty Blue here with us today, and we're thrilled that you guys are all here. Marty is, as I mentioned before, she's from the Boston area. She's an executive who has some amazing experience she can talk to us about the comprehensive approach to thinking about growing your business and what that means. And she was with Reebok, so she was with a big brand for a while, many years, and oversaw licensing for them, or worked on licensing, and then joined an organization called CarGurus, which I'm not sure if many of you know, or I assume many of you do. They're even in the UK and around the world. That is the largest online, I may not be saying this properly, Marty, but the largest digital platform for car marketplace. That's what it was.
Automotive marketplace is the easiest way to say it.
There you go. And she was there when there were 14 people, and when she left, it was then a publicly traded company and 700 people. So she's been from the very small and helped it grow into very big, and now is a senior fellow or advisor at Boston Consulting Group and an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School. But she can tell you more about her journey. Jeannie Barnett is an amazing woman as well, has had some significant experience in the editorial world. She's been the founder of one or two magazines, Jeannie. I can't remember if it was 2 magazines.
Editor-in-chief of a magazine and a co-founder of a newsletter back in the day, focusing on minority and women entrepreneurs, now called Diverse Founders.
And she today is the director of communications for an organization called Gingerbread Capital, which is a venture capital firm that invests in female founder businesses. They're out in California. Jeannie's in Baltimore area, I believe, right? For now, we're going to do a fireside chat. And then what we're going to do is break into 2 breakout groups. So because I know many of you had some fantastic questions in advance, we want to give you the opportunity to join in and get more specific feedback from an advisor, which is great. And so we'll do that. And then what we'll do is we'll swap. So if you end up in a breakout room with Marty, learn as much from Marty, and then we're going to have Marty switch to the other one, and Jeannie and Marty will switch places so you can learn from both of them for the last part. We're going to mix it up a little bit this time than we have the last time. So we heard you guys, you wanted smaller groups, so we're doing smaller groups. So just to kick off, maybe Marty, I sort of brushed over your amazing journey and career, but would you mind giving a little more insight into your path? And even, I think for our innovators here, what made you make decisions? Why did you get into this area? And what have you loved about that? And same question to you, Jeannie. What drives you?
So I'll try to do a brief version of how I got to where I am, which is I started right after college. I worked for a sports marketing company, and I did that for 4 years. I loved sports. I had played sports all through college and high school, and I loved the business of sports. And a sports marketing firm in the sense that we were doing events. And that was in probably long before most of you were even born. But in those days, a lot of corporations were really looking for just the branding associated with sporting events and not really looking at the data to see if they were getting their money's worth. It was really just about branding. And so I did everything from old timers baseball games to golf events to ski events. There was a lot of client entertaining that went around this as well. And after doing that for 4 years, it was a great experience. I learned a ton, but also a lot of sporting events happen on the weekend. And I wanted to, be able to have a life outside of just, going to events on the weekends, even though it was fun. I went to business school for 2 years. And after that, I still wanted to be in sports, but I wanted to be more on the business side a little bit more. So I talked to a lot of leagues. I ended up at Reebok. I ended up in licensing, and it was a phenomenal experience. And what I loved about licensing was that it touched on a lot of different functions. And also I worked across a number of brands and a number of product categories. So even though I did it for 16 years, I was constantly learning. I was constantly being challenged. And when I talk about brands, it's everything from Reebok, Weebok. Reebok at one time owned Greg Norman, Rockport, Alessi, Boston Whaler. So many brands. And then product categories was everything from soft goods like kids apparel and footwear to hard goods like treadmills and basketballs and hard equipment as well. In that role, I was responsible everything from the due diligence of understanding an industry to then reaching out to who the potential licensees could be, or if they had contacted us, doing our due diligence that way, really becoming an expert in whatever industry we were looking at. And then everything from negotiating the agreement, helping design the product, making sure that the product had a reason for being, so product development, and then moving on to the marketing of it, really working with the mother brand to make sure that the branding was consistent. The distribution, incredibly important, what channels of distribution we would go into, and then also, the financial aspect of it as well. And I left there after Reebok was acquired by Adidas. I did consulting for a couple of years on my own. I went to CarGurus, which was founded by a guy who I knew for a long time, who was a year ahead of me at Tuck. And he had a good track record. He was coming from TripAdvisor. And I really had nothing to lose. I was like, you know what, why not? Let's just give this a try. And I was incredibly fortunate. I started when we were only a company of 14 people. I started in business development. Sometimes business development means sales, but in this capacity, it meant partnerships. So I ran all of our partnerships, and I can talk more about the specifics of that later. But eventually I ended up launching our B2B marketing function, our product function, our industry relations function. And I would hand these off, as we grew them, and we needed to bring in dedicated people to run those organizations, often who had a lot more experience in those specific functions than I did. But I got incredible experience, and the company was phenomenally successful. And now I can, dabble where I want to, which is really fun.
Thanks, Marty. I have to come back, and after Jeannie goes, I want to talk to you a little bit about wearing multiple hats and knowing that you might not be the best doing what you are being asked to do, and that you need to hire somebody better than you. I want to come back to that, because I think that's a good lesson for everybody. It's reality. So I think it's a good lesson to talk about.
Yeah. And the only thing I'd add to that, and we can go into that in more detail, is that you're not always necessarily hiring somebody because you're not at the point where you're ready to hire somebody. So then you're just tapping into people who do know that function better than you and really learning from them.
That's great advice.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Jeannie, please.
No, that's great. Wow. Okay. That's a hard act to follow. Holy moly. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeannie. Gosh, talking about my journey. I'm so used to, as a communicator, talking about everybody else's journey. And so it's really hard talking about myself. I got my start. Oh gosh, well, grew up in a house of, my dad was an artist. He was a painter and an art director. And so art and creativity was kind of ingrained in us from an early age. And so I wanted to be a writer as long as I can remember. I wanted to go to school, get a degree, and become a novelist. And then, you get to college and you realize, oh, well, that's not a career, actually. You don't just become an entry-level novelist. So I was a bit of an idealist as well. And in high school, we had a Vista volunteer. Back in the day, there was a program called Vista. Come and talk about volunteering. And so, gosh, that put the bug in me, and I decided I wanted to join the Peace Corps, which I did after college. And I went to West Africa and spent 2 years teaching high school in a small village in the country of Ghana. And it was quite an experience, and it really changed my life forever. I learned about how people with very little means can create something out of nothing through entrepreneurship. And that really started me on a path that's been lifelong, promoting entrepreneurship as a way of developing communities and of alleviating and curing poverty, if you will, in communities and countries. And so I came back to the States and got a job with a friend of the family who had just started a magazine focused on entrepreneurship. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is really going to fuel my passions. And I stayed there for 10 years. We focused on minority business development and entrepreneurship development for women and people of color. And I did that for 10 years. and focused on public policy that encouraged entrepreneurship as a way of community development. And that took me to Harvard, which is where I met Julie, and we were at the Kennedy School together. I was very interested in public policy and how that transforms communities and societies for the better. So that got me into the communications area for nonprofits. After I left Harvard, I moved to New York and got a job eventually with a nonprofit called Cancer Care. And for 6 years was their communications director, promoting their programs across the country, providing psychosocial services to people experiencing cancer. And from there, I decided eventually to hang my own shingle and become the freelance writer that I always dreamed of. And I will tell you, it's hard work being entrepreneurial yourself and trying to drum up business. But for the past 6 or so years, I have been working with a variety of clients, one of which Julie mentioned is Gingerbread Capital. And that is a venture capital firm started by the daughter of the publisher I worked with way back in the day, focused on funding female founders who are creating transformational businesses and businesses that will scale and eventually in the VC game go to IPO, taking something from an idea to a very, very big enterprise. And so I do the communications for them. And my passion really is promoting these stories of people who take an idea and create jobs and create new ways of living and working and making the world a better place. And that's my passion. I've been doing that for quite some time now.
Thanks, Jeannie. I love how there's that common thread of, I didn't realize your entrepreneurial passion started in Ghana, but I totally appreciate and know exactly what you're talking about with their creativity in developing countries and just how amazing the people are. So I'm going to jump to Marty for a question about just you talked about it a little bit with the sales is sometimes business development, but I think so that many of the people on this call, they have ideas, they have concepts, they're trying to figure out, how do I grow it? How do I reach more people? How do I get more people involved? Some are asking, how do I sell my product to someone? Some are asking, how do I get a school involved in using my campaign, my program? It's whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, it's still how do I get people involved? How do I get people to buy into my idea, or have I done the right thing? And so can you talk a little bit about the different strategies of business development, of sales, of partnerships, and of pure marketing? We will carve out social media discussion in a second, because I know that's a critical piece, but just in general, the functionality, like how, if I'm a founder of one of these ideas or somebody thinking about it, how should I be thinking about these different things in how I approach outreach to my audience or my market? How do I do that? Can you give the overview, the landscape of what the different areas are?
Yeah, I mean, I think strategically, one of the things that we always really focused on at CarGurus was the 80-20 rule. And so even before, what the landscape is, it's really important to think about what's going to have the most impact. And so what you don't want to do is waste time doing something that's only going to help you marginally. You need to focus on the efforts that are going to really help you move the dial. So I think that's the most important place to start, because otherwise, I think what happens to a lot of founders is that you can get distracted, you can go down a rabbit hole, and you really need to focus on what's going to help me get to my destination. And you have to know what the destination is also, but we can talk about that later. And the destination, you can have goals along the way also, but what's going to really help you to get there? And then understanding, what's going to give you the most bang for your buck? And is it a partnership with somebody? And business development and partnership, I actually use those terms interchangeably. But a lot of in sales, when people talk about sales, a lot of times they use business development also. So just something to be aware of. So whenever I talk about business development, I always say business development as in partnerships, not business development as in sales. Sales is in business development and sales, a lot of time means cultivating potential clients or potential targets. So does that answer your question, Julie? Or I think
Yep. But what about do you think about like the integrated marketing aspect of it too, or the branding piece of it as well? Where does that come into play?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
It really depends on whether you're a consumer focused business or not. Because when I started at CarGurus, we were B2B. We were not selling to consumers. And so we were not putting any money into branding whatsoever. There are a lot of incredibly successful companies out there that are more of the back end or the engine to some very successful brands that you know about. And so I think that's the first question is branding important? Is it important that your name is known? And when we were selling at that time B2B, it wasn't important. So the branding is only important if you're trying to get the attention of consumers. And then if you are trying to get the attention of consumers, then that's the strategy of marketing to a consumer is very different than the strategy of B2B marketing. We can talk about that and more.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll cover that link. Jeannie, you are very passionate about the fundamentals and authenticity in storytelling. And can you talk a little bit more about that? And because I think it builds a little bit on what Marty was saying with the branding. It's like in how you're representing your real self as an organization. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think with every startup and especially in the seed phase that you all are in right now, it's really finding your voice and being very, very clear about your messaging. And that really starts with understanding the product or service that you're offering, the audience that you're offering it to, what your values are. That's very, very important. So that out of your values comes your mission and your vision. And those are, I think, the fundamentals, the fundamental building blocks of any kind of communication or marketing plan. And strengthening those ideas is really where you're at right now with the concepts that you're building for your campaigns or your social ventures. So getting that authenticity, telling that story in the most honest way possible. First of all, why are you doing this? What is it that resonates with you and your personal experience that is driving you to want to do this venture? And as a social venture, of course, by definition, you're trying to change the world. You're trying to change something for the better. And so to identify the problem that you're addressing and to show why the solution you're presenting is really a solution to that problem and how you are different from other solutions. The marketplace is a very crowded and messy thing, but because somebody else is doing something similar does not mean that there's no room for you. But differentiating yourself from others in your space that you're occupying is really important. And so all of that, I think, is about mining what is really in your heart and what is really driving you to want to do this in the world. Because at the end of the day, you could be doing anything. You're all going to amazing universities and you're really having an amazing education that you're going to be taking from this time in your life. And so, gosh, why choose to do this over anything else that you might have the option of doing? And it's really about putting that passion out there in the world, but being really honest about it at the end of the day.
So I want to tie in Saturday in June 26th is our demo day, where the young people who have been our youth social innovators who have been going through our startup leadership lab for the last 5 months will be pitching their ideas for support. And part of it, some of them are thinking about the next round of funding. Some of them have already won funding, additional funding. Some of them are going to be looking for new team members. Some of them are going to be looking for more mentors. Some of them need more time in the saddle to to think about their values, their mission. And Marty, this is a question for both of you guys, is thinking, if you were in their shoes, and again, not everybody on this call is one of our grant winners, but they're all social innovators and leaders in their own right, and they're working on their own initiatives. What advice do you have for them in that pitch, whether you're sitting down with not a venture capitalist at this point, but somebody you want to get on your team, or when you're needing that next round of support? Do you have any advice for them in that? And I want both of you to answer that. It's like thinking about that right now. Like, how do you ask somebody for help? Like Marty, you said that, like, it might not be that you can go hire that person, but you might need somebody to volunteer to help you. Or how do you go get those resources that you want? And how do you position yourself that makes it, and your organization or your idea, that makes people want to do something with you? Any thoughts? I mean, either one of you can go first.
Marty?
Well, you can't be shy. So that's one thing. I would say, there's a lot of talk about, an elevator pitch, but an elevator pitch really matters, and a good elevator pitch matters. And you have to be able to very succinctly communicate what it is that your organization does and what you're looking to achieve and how you're going to get there. And that's a lot to communicate in a 2-minute elevator pitch, but you need that. And so really thinking about, what it is that you want to communicate, and how are you going to do that, and how are you going to do it in a way that everybody's going to get it very quickly. I recently had somebody pitch me something, and there were a couple things happening, and one of them was, he was just like going on and on and on and on, and I still was like, okay, I don't get how this is going to work. And so it was just a frustrating experience. I don't know if it was frustrating for him, but it was frustrating for me, because, and also he just kept talking and never really gave me a chance to talk. So that was frustrating also. So she knows what I'm talking about. And then the other part I would add to that is, don't be afraid to have an ask. So think about, what's the ask? What are you trying to achieve? And I would think about that with every interaction. If it's you're reaching out to somebody because you can't hire somebody, but you need some advice, and you're just trying to understand their industry, then it'd be very clear. Listen, I'm calling for some free advice, and I know that your time is valued, but I'm just hoping that you really wouldn't mind spending some time with me. Or if you're asking for money, ask. It's the other frustrating thing is when you don't know at the end, like, okay, so where do we go from here? Like, what are the next steps, and what's the ask?
Wow, that is such excellent advice. I want to echo that elevator pitch. Honing your pitch down to 90 seconds to 2 minutes is essential. Marty's experience is one we have too often, where people are just in love with hearing their own voices. You don't want to be that person, okay? And you want to be very, very clear about what it is you are talking about with people, and not, sucking up all the oxygen in the room. You want to give people the opportunity to give you some feedback, because every conversation is an opportunity for you to iterate. And with an idea at this stage, you want a continual honing of your idea. Now, that doesn't mean like getting off mission or off topic. You need to be tenacious about what you're most passionate about, but feedback is so important to absorb and take away what is really helpful, and to be open to hearing the hard stuff too, the positive criticism, because there's nothing that'll kill your idea quicker than rigidity. And feeling like nobody else has anything to offer, that you've got the perfect solution. There is no such thing as a perfect solution. It's based on how things continually evolve. I wanted to also say that having that ask is very important, but make it easy for people to help you. Do not dump your problem into somebody else's lap and then say, "Help me, what do I do?" What you want to do is have a very specific ask. Can you introduce me to somebody? Do you have 10 minutes where I can find out X, Y, or Z. You have this particular expertise. What would you advise me to do in this particular situation? Just be very, very clear and don't think that somebody else is going to solve your problem for you. And I think that storytelling, again, back to that elevator pitch, what emotionally resonates with the person you're talking to. Have a little empathy in the story that you're telling. And something that is, important heart and soul to you, try to convey that passion. That's really important in getting people excited about your idea.
Marty, did you want to add on to that?
No, I was just agreeing. I thought those were great points. Really.
I want to ask you guys, because you clearly have achieved a lot in your life and have been called, I'm sure, by people say, hey, can I run something by you? One of the things that I'd love for you guys to talk about is that, and then we're going to pivot to social media for a second, is this idea of doing your homework before you show up at someone's office, and how if you go into your office, Marty, with an ask and they haven't done their homework on you. I mean, can you talk, do you know where I'm going with this? Is like, how important is it for you to know everything about that person you're about to sit down with? And the other thing is, like, they don't need to know everything. They just need to know what they need to know. And so it's like, Jeannie, we talked about this, with the right information, the right person at the right time. Like, maybe, because I think I'd love to, if you guys could just talk quickly about that, because it's a real tangible piece of advice I think we could all use, those two pieces, and then we'll switch over to social media marketing and digital marketing in the breakout rooms.
Well, I think the most important way to think about, having done your homework ahead of time is that if you don't do your homework ahead of time, you're not going to get the most out of the meeting that you can get out of the meeting. So let's say you've got 30 minutes. Do you really want to spend 10 minutes of me, telling you about myself? Because you could have done all of that work ahead of time, and instead you could spend 10 minutes telling me about your business, and we could spend 20 minutes brainstorming. So it's a complete, it's a waste of time. It's also really frustrating on behalf, on the side of the person who you've contacted, for them to, if you're asking specific questions about, why a decision was made or why they went in a certain direction, that's totally fine. But to have me give you my biography is a waste of time.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Jeannie,
Yeah.
any thoughts on that? Or?
I agree. I think that's right. This is a two-way conversation. It's not about a performance. And when you are asking for someone's advice, someone's help, someone's connections or network, you have to be really specific. But also, how rude is it to just like walk in a cold call? Nobody does that successfully. You want to relate to people on a person-to-person level. You want to know who you're talking to, and it's as much about conserving your time as it is the other person too. Make sure that it's the right fit for what you're trying to accomplish. And remember that these are not relationship building isn't about a transaction. Mm-hmm. It's about a longer term relationship where it is a give and take. What can you do for that person too is also an important question to ask. It's not just about take, but what can you give in return as well? Think about it that way. And if it's not this particular person you're talking to, that concept of paying it forward is a really good thing to keep in mind.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that also, not in a pitch scenario, but in a one-on-one meeting scenario, it is good if you can make a connection early on. So if you know something about them, and you can say like, oh, I also played, rugby, something like that. If you both did that, so if you've looked into their background, you can find something that, or I also traveled, where Jeannie's traveled, or I have an interest in philanthropy in the same areas. Anything like that, where you can make that connection, is important as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So let's talk about social media marketing, digital, that we, as we've talked about, we all agree that technology has done amazing things in this world. But I think what not everybody understands is the impact that it's had on young people and their mental health and well-being, and how it has escalated some issues that were pre-existing, whether it's our self-esteem or comparison culture. We used to compare ourselves to Vogue magazine. Now these guys are comparing themselves to their friends on social media. And this is a very sophisticated group that you're talking to here, and understanding the algorithms behind the marketing mechanisms and the business models. I mean, this group gets that business model, and they understand the harms that can come from that too, particularly from young kids who are being affected. But so as marketers and communicators, and again, we're about we believe it, look up for the appropriate use of technology and digital platforms. But can you talk a little bit about it from two angles? One, from the marketing executive's mindset or the communications person's mindset of how you're thinking about marketing and what tools even you're getting out of it. Like, a lot of people don't know what Google Analytics, like, what is it that you're looking for as marketers, and why do you want to know that information? That's one question. And then on the total flip side is like, how do you do really good social media marketing? Because I know a lot of these kids want to do that without crossing the ethical line. So I mean, honestly, that's the world we live in. It's like, how do I not cross ethics? But this is the way of communicating and reaching people, especially for the younger and younger generations to come. So I don't know, that's kind of a volleyball. Marty can get that, metaphor. So toss that one over. But you guys can you have thoughts on that, and any advice for insight into the marketing mind about that, and then the tips of how do you do good social media marketing?
Oh, I think it might be Jeannie's turn to go first.
I'm still trying to crack that. Social media is, you're addressing exactly the advantages and the real downsides. We've all watched The Social Dilemma, yes. So I think that this audience that I'm talking to now is a lot more sophisticated than I am. I view social media and the platforms that we incorporate pretty old-fashioned. My clients were basically LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I haven't delved into Snapchat, TikTok, Reddit, or any of the other of the moment. I've just gotten onto Clubhouse once or twice, and I just think, oh my gosh, how much more conversation can we have out there? I think it all boils down to values. Again, no matter if you're social media or you're slapping up a billboard on the side of the road. Authenticity, always tell the truth, never lie, do no harm. Those are the tenets. And don't exaggerate. There's no reason to exaggerate in this world, and especially as a social venture. You've got more than enough reality to take a bite of, and I don't think you need to dress it up. That would be my advice to anybody using social media as a platform, to build audience. And I think you can build audience one follower at a time. Why do it? Because I think with social media, more is more from a marketing perspective. The more eyeballs you have, the more people are aware of what you're trying to accomplish. But I don't think it should ever be used by a marketer or a PR person or a communicator to spread disinformation. Sadly, more and more it is becoming a tool for evil, and we have to combat that as ethical marketers every day. So that's my general advice.
Marty, thoughts?
That was so great. I don't know what to add on top of that. I guess adding a little bit more to the more specifics of marketing, I would say that data matters. If you're really trying to make sure that you are having an effective marketing plan, that data is really important these days. And that's why, Julie mentioned Google Analytics, that these resources are incredibly important. So otherwise you can start really, throwing good money after bad money. And by really being analytical about where you're spending your money and your time, and whether or not you're getting the results that you want is incredibly important.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversation. Some of our teams are doing social media campaigns to engage people around the topic. But as you both probably know, it's a busy world out there on the social media platform. So it's well, gosh, do I need to be on this every hour, or can I just post things occasionally? And how do you, I mean, I sent you some of the list of the questions, and I'm sure you'll get into that, but it's how do you create engagement? How do you create loyalty and with your customers or your potential customers through a social media platform that's quite superficial? It's really not, you don't really have 1,000 friends or followers. You have somebody who clicked on their button, so how do you create that sense of engagement and authenticity, I guess, authentic engagement rather than just followers?
Well, I think it starts with adding value. What are you posting? If it's crap, it's going to be, received as such. Are you giving people some information that could be useful in their own lives? And that's what I have to weigh with every post I do for every client. Like, is this useful information? Try to be presenting something of value rather than, hey, I'm here, trying to get, move away from the attention seeking to using the platforms to promote and create value.
I love that. That's really good. I was going to say that, we really, again, at CarGurus, we were B2B, but we focused on having a great product, having a really easy consumer experience. And it was, if you build a good product, then that will help a lot. Unfortunately, the good product alone is not enough. You do have to, look at your SEM and look at your SEO and look at these other factors as well. But focusing on like having something that's useful to people and is easily digestible or easy to use and is adding value, then you're, already head and shoulders above where you need to be.
Great. All right. I want to be mindful of the time, and I appreciate snaps for you guys for the fireside chat.